Hey everyone, the Ranking Reel here. Today we're diving into a topic that's both fascinating and a little terrifying: mistakes. Not just any mistakes, mind you, but the kind that make your stomach drop and your wallet weep. We're talking about the most expensive blunders, miscalculations, and outright oopsies in history. From billion-dollar business deals gone wrong to engineering catastrophes that would make your head spin, we're going to explore the moments where things went spectacularly and expensively wrong. And trust me, some of these stories will have you wondering how anyone could make such seemingly simple mistakes with such enormous consequences. But here's the thing about mistakes. They're a part of life, even on a massive historical scale. They remind us that even the smartest people and most powerful organizations aren't immune to the occasional blunder. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a wild ride through some of the most epic fails in human history. And hey, maybe we'll even learn a thing or two about how to avoid making similar mistakes ourselves.
The year 2000. Y2K had just fizzled out, the Backstreet Boys were still a thing, and the internet was about to explode. But not in a good way, at least not for AOL and Time Warner. These two giants of media, one a titan of the old guard and the other the new kid on the block, decided to merge in a deal worth a staggering $350 billion. It was a match made in, well, let's just say it looked good on paper. The idea was simple. Combine AOL's massive online reach with Time Warner's treasure trove of content, from CNN to Warner Brothers, and create a multimedia powerhouse for the digital age. What could possibly go wrong? As it turned out, a lot. The dot-com bubble burst, taking AOL's stock price and the merger's value down with it. Cultural clashes between the two companies, conflicting visions, and the rapid evolution of the internet all contributed to the disaster.
Let's be honest, we all love a good architectural quirk, and the Leaning Tower of Pisa is practically the poster child. But this iconic tilt wasn't part of the original blueprint. Construction began in 1173, and almost immediately, the tower started to, well, lean. The problem? Unstable subsoil. The builders had laid the foundation on a mix of sand, clay, and shells. Not exactly the most solid ground to build on, especially for a 55-meter tall tower. Attempts to correct the lean during construction only made it worse, and the tower was finally completed in the 14th century, leaning at a precarious 5.5 degrees. The cost of trying to fix this leaning problem over the centuries? Let's just say it's enough to make you want to lie down and take a nap.
In 1628, Sweden was a major power, and King Gustavus Adolphus wanted a fearsome navy. Enter the Vasa, a warship so grand, so opulent, so top-heavy that it sank just minutes into its maiden voyage. The problem? Let's just say the king and shipbuilding didn't exactly see eye to eye. The king demanded changes to the ship's design, adding more cannons and a second gun deck, making it unstable. On that fateful day, a gust of wind caught the sails, and the Vasa, top-heavy and lacking proper ballast, tipped and sank to the bottom of Stockholm harbour. The financial loss was immense, equivalent to a significant portion of the Swedish national budget at the time.
Remember the housing market crash of 2008? Yeah, that was a fun time. It was triggered in part by the subprime mortgage crisis, a financial fiasco of epic proportions. The basic idea was this: banks were giving out mortgages like candy on Halloween, even to people who couldn't afford them, the subprime borrowers. These risky mortgages were then bundled together and sold off as complex investments, which seemed like a good idea at the time. But when housing prices stopped rising and borrowers started defaulting, the whole house of cards came crashing down. The result? A global financial meltdown, trillions of dollars in losses, and a whole lot of people losing their homes.
Space exploration is hard, it's expensive, and sometimes it's a victim of the most mundane of errors. Take the Mars Climate Orbiter, for example. This $327 million spacecraft was supposed to orbit Mars, studying its atmosphere and climate. It never made it. The problem? A mix-up between imperial and metric units. One team at NASA was using metric units, while another was using imperial. This seemingly small discrepancy meant that the spacecraft approached Mars at the wrong angle and burned up in the atmosphere. Ouch. The loss of the orbiter was a major setback for NASA and a stark reminder that even in the age of high tech, sometimes it's the simplest things that trip us up. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010 was an environmental catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. It all started with an explosion on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 workers and triggering the largest marine oil spill in history. The disaster was caused by a series of failures, including faulty equipment, poor safety procedures, and a corporate culture that prioritized profit over safety. The environmental and economic consequences were devastating, with millions of barrels of oil spilling into the Gulf, damaging marine life, coastal ecosystems, and the livelihoods of countless people. The total cost of the disaster, including cleanup and settlements, is estimated to be over $65 billion.
Remember the Zune? You'd be forgiven if you don't. It was Microsoft's attempt to challenge the iPod's dominance in the early 2000s, and it went about as well as you'd expect from a product that launched with the slogan, "Welcome to the Social." Despite some innovative features like wireless music sharing and a sleek design, the Zune was plagued by software glitches, limited music selection, and a general lack of consumer interest. It also didn't help that the iPod was, well, the iPod. Microsoft finally pulled the plug on the Zune in 2012 after reportedly losing billions of dollars on the venture. In the annals of marketing mishaps, few are as infamous as New Coke. In 1985, Coca-Cola, a brand synonymous with, well, Coke, decided to change the formula of its iconic beverage. The reason? Blind taste tests showed that people preferred the sweeter taste of rival Pepsi. The response was swift and overwhelmingly negative. People hated New Coke. They missed the original formula, and they weren't afraid to let Coca-Cola know it. Protests erupted, angry letters poured in, and sales plummeted. Just 3 months after its disastrous launch, Coca-Cola brought back the original formula, rebranded as Coca-Cola Classic.
The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 was a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of nuclear accidents. A flawed reactor design, coupled with human error and inadequate safety procedures, led to a catastrophic explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine. The explosion released massive amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere, contaminating a vast area and forcing the evacuation of Pripyat, the nearby city that housed plant workers and their families. The human cost was immense, with countless lives lost due to radiation poisoning and long-term health effects. We end our journey through history's most expensive mistakes with a tale so old it's practically a myth, the Trojan horse. After a decade of besieging the city of Troy, the Greeks came up with a cunning plan. They built a giant wooden horse, ostensibly an offering to the goddess Athena, and sailed away, leaving it behind. The Trojans, believing the war was over, wheeled the horse inside their city walls, not realizing it was filled with Greek soldiers. That night, the Greeks emerged from the horse, opened the city gates, and sacked Troy, ending the Trojan War.
So there you have it, 10 of the most expensive mistakes in history. From business blunders to engineering failures and everything in between, these stories remind us that even the smartest people and most powerful organizations are capable of making colossal mistakes. But more than just a catalogue of catastrophes, these stories offer valuable lessons about risk, hubris, and the importance of learning from our mistakes. They remind us that progress is often messy and unpredictable, and that even the most well-laid plans can go awry.
What do you think about these mistakes? Do any of them surprise you? And more importantly, what lessons can we learn from them today? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.